Whoa. All right, guys, welcome back to another motivational overview Monday. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys my MP5 build. I actually really like the MP5 a lot just because it's super modular and it's a lot of fun to shoot, and also just has a lot of
y'all will never do that again.
You know, Hollywood aesthetics. I'm really digging this gun. I'm gonna show you this current configuration. As usual, I'm gonna be going from tip to butt. I guess let's get into the build. At the front here, I've got an Omega 9K. I've got it on a little tri-lug adapter. This is actually the older one. The newer one is actually recessed into the can, so you can actually make it about an inch shorter than what it is already. I'd say there is an aesthetic to having a longer suppressor on an MP5, especially an A3 style, but having the short can on there keeps the profile very short, nice, crisp, clean, you know, so I do kind of like having the Omega 9K on here. I do also have an Octane 9 that sometimes I'll put on there just to get that longer 9mm aesthetic on a sub gun, but the short Omega 9K on there, it works well for this setup. Moving to the rear here, I've got a Surefire Scout Light. This is actually just an older standard mini Scout, so it's got, I think, 500 lumens on it. It's pretty low, but you know, it's a sub gun, so I don't really expect to be taking like super long shots with it. I've got it mounted on a Surefire tri-rail. I don't remember the exact model, but it should be written up somewhere here. The nice thing about this is the Surefire tri-rail has actually been discontinued for the MP5 for a long time, and I actually prefer it to the Knights tri-rail because the profile of how far the pick rails stick out from the gun, it's actually a little bit tighter to the gun, so it doesn't have as thick of a profile as the Knights tri-rail is. And I guess it's a little bit more rare because they stopped making them a long time ago, whereas the tri-rail, now that they've re-released it, you can get pretty easily. So the Surefire tri-rail is pretty nice, and like I said, the profile is a little thinner, so that way you don't have to have huge hands to wrap around it. I do have a Knights Armament broomstick vertical grip underneath here, and this one is actually a chopped one, so it's not the standard full length. I actually had a gunsmith custom chop it down. It works the same way in terms of attachment, but it's a little bit of a stubby grip. And I do like this, especially on this MP5, because the mags curve forward. It's nice to have the grip be a little bit stubby, so that way it doesn't come as far down, so that when you're trying to clear your magazines, it stays pretty nice and clear, and I do like the stubby look on here a lot. I forgot to mention this Scout Light. I'm using a Surefire dual switch. I used to have a laser system on here because I was running this gun as a night gun, but now that I've kind of moved away from it, I just haven't changed the switch out. So this is just a standard Surefire dual switch, and the light activation is momentary only. The sling here is a Grave Solutions Flecktarn sling. I put the Flecktarn sling on here because it's a German MP5, so I wanted a little bit of flavor on it. I would say this isn't necessarily my favorite sling, being that I think it's a little bit short, which ends up working okay for sub guns, but if you're gonna put it on longer guns, the length on it is a little short. I would prefer to have a little bit more webbing to play with. When you actually have this cinched up, it does get pretty tight. That may not necessarily be a bad thing, and like I said, it works really well on the sub guns, but some of my other slings, like the Sierra Tacs, are a little bit longer, so you do prefer that. However, really easy adjustment, and it is padded. I'm a big fan of having pads on slings. Just takes a lot of the weight off you. Having a 1-inch webbing cutting into your neck isn't very comfortable, so having the padding is just nice. So I do like that about this sling a lot. The only complaint, like I said, is it's a little short, but I think it matches the gun really well. I have a couple Knights Armament panels on here. That's nothing really too crazy. That way it kind of makes it so that the Picatinny rail doesn't cut up my delicate, gentle hands. Behind that, I pretty much just have the MP5. Now, the MP5 itself is not an HK. It's actually an MKE, and this is the Turkish clone company that was making these. This is actually a very old import that was done by ATI, so this is way before all the Zenith and all the current, I think Century now does the MKE imports. So this was early days when MKE basically just got the factory from HK. So all of the tooling is really nice. It's very clean. The compatibility with HK components is very high. So I obviously had this done as a short barrel rifle. So what I did, because the gun originally started as a full length 16-inch rifle, I had it done up on a Form 4, SBR'd, and then I bought an HK tri-lug barrel and I had it pressed in. So I had to send that out, have an HK gunsmith press in the new tri-lug barrel. So now I've got a 9-inch HK barrel in there. And then that way I can also use suppressors. I basically changed out the internals. So I have an HK bolt carrier group. I have an HK trigger pack in here. So I switched this out because originally it had an A2 style stock on it and it had the housing for the trigger guard as an integrated single piece. So I ended up ditching that, got myself an HK trigger pack and an HK housing. So I've got the SEF style housing here. I'm rocking usually HK mags, but I also use KCI magazines because they work pretty well. On a whim, I bought some of those ETS clear translucent MP5 mags. I'm not crazy about those magazines, but in all fairness, I am really hard on them and I do throw them on the ground pretty hard when I'm doing reloads, and they seem to hold up pretty well. I would say that out of all the magazines I have, the HK variety seems to work the best, so I tend to stick with those whenever I can. I've also got them in a bunch of different lengths. HK mags in 30 round as well as the 15 round short ones, and then I have some KCIs in 30 as well as the 20 rounders and the ETS mags in the 30 round. I have a random Picatinny rail that I found. It looks kind of like the B&T Picatinny optic mount. However, it's not actually B&T. It's made by some random company. I'm pretty sure it's probably Century or one of those roller delay companies that makes these mounts, because I'm pretty sure this mount will work on most roller delayed guns. And then on top of it, I've got an Aimpoint Comp M5. I'm not a huge fan of having the Comp M5 on here because the iron sights block the sight picture. So when I'm looking through here, I can see the top half of the front sight ring, but it's one of those things where I like the low profileness of this guy. So for now, I'm rocking the Comp M5 on here. I think aesthetically, having an Aimpoint Micro on an MP5 looks good. You could definitely go with something like an EOTech or something like that. But at the height that it's at right now, I don't have the ability to use the iron sights with this setup. So there's probably something better out there, but right now that's what I've got on this gun. I also changed the front sight post on this MP5 to a tritium insert one. So normally it's just a single post or like a blade or something like that. This one actually has a vial of tritium in here. Unfortunately, the tritium is getting pretty dim, so I think it's pretty much at the end of its lifespan. I'll probably end up getting a new tritium vial popped in there. I do kind of like having a little bit of a reference on the front, and the post is a little bit thicker, so that is a little bit of a disadvantage, but I'm not really shooting irons too much on this gun. I mostly just use red dots on it, so this tends to work pretty well, and the Comp M5 is a pretty beefy optic. Finally, I have a B&T side folding stock. This is my favorite stock for MP5s, not for the sake of aesthetics, but for actual usage, because the best stock, in my opinion, for the MP5 is the A2. It's the most comfortable to shoot off of, but the A2 is non-folding, so it makes your gun super big unnecessarily. So if you have the B&T side folder, this gives you a very comfortable cheek well, and because it folds, then it allows you to tuck this into really small bags and transport it very easily. And aesthetically, I think the folding stock for the MP5 looks really good. So I think, it is one of the nicer looking stocks. I will say my favorite stock of all for the MP5 is going to be the A3 style collapsible stock, and not the newer F style, but the original A3. I think that's my favorite for usability purposes and for a gun that I'm trying to make into something that's more capable in terms of like modern capabilities with modern lights, modern optic, vertical grip, controls are well placed, and the compactness with the side folding stock. I think for trying to adapt an older weapon system into you know, the current age of using this gun. Now, I did mention earlier that my MP5 is one of my favorites because of the modularity. So I do have a bunch of different parts for the MP5. So in some of the other videos later, I will reconfigure it and show you some of the other setups that I have for it. But right now, I think if I were to grab the MP5 and use it for, I don't know, any kind of close range engagements, maybe home defense, and you know, just shooting 9mm so that I can keep the same caliber that I'm using at the range for my primary and my secondary. The MP5 is an awesome platform. I will say there's probably better stuff out there, like the APC 9s are looking pretty good, but if you're looking for that classic aesthetic and, you know, just being able to slap it, I think is a pretty nice benefit. But yeah, that's basically the whole gun. This is actually a really simple gun. I've put a lot of work into it. Like I said, swapping out the barrel was no easy feat, but you know, just I think it was worth it after, you know, what it originally was configured as, a fixed stock that was attached to the lower, and then a 16-inch barrel, and then converting everything over and putting all the parts on it. I think it was well worth it in the long run. A lot of fun on the MP5 build. If you have your own MP5, let me know how you set it up, because I'm always interested to see what people do to their guns. There's a lot more aftermarket support now for MP5s than there was back in the day. So, you know, a lot of the older builds rely on basically just, I mean, surefire parts for the most part and like the nice stuff. But now you've got like Magpul stuff, and like a lot of companies are making really cool and interesting things. Like I saw some company that makes a rail that goes across the top here and it lets you mount stuff to the top, which is wild. I don't know how you would manipulate the charging handle. That might be kind of weird. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff out there for MP5s. If you have one or know of different setups, just let me know in the comments below. Yeah, feel free to check out our Instagram. We always got really cool stuff on there, and you'll definitely get a little heads up on what the next video is going to be about. Let me know, like, what kind of guns do you want to see me overview? And if I can get my hands on it, I will. Got a lot more guns coming up, so stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll see you next time.
And I want to make another joke, like if I do, like, you guys will get demonetized. You got it.